Good morning, everybody. It is so nice to see you. I'm just going to turn off the waiting room here. We'll give just a minute. Everyone's joining in right now. We've got a big turnout today, or an expected big turnout. It's nice to see some people. It's been a while since we've done this. We've done a webinar. It's been like 2 months, I think. We took the winter off for various reasons. It's nice to have all of you back. I see Jackie. I feel like romper room. I see this person and this person. And Lorraine, how's it going? All right, it is 11:01. I want to get started today. Good morning, everybody. Feel free in the chat to introduce yourself and where you're from. It's always nice to see the variety of people we have here. My name is Greg Friedman. I'm with the California Placement Association. I want to thank you all for attending our webinar today. I want to thank Transfer Inc. They are our sponsor. They are leading the future of training. They're using the virtual reality goggles. They're using Oculus Rift, and you can have your students hands-on virtually take courses. They're doing career exploration, automotive repair, diesel mechanics, construction, culinary, medical care, aviation, and your students are getting all this training in the classroom, basically hands-on training before they go out for their internships. Amazing company. Check them out, what they can do. Great people, and we really appreciate them sponsoring these to allow our webinars to happen. And it is so great to see all of you here. I want to take a minute, have our board members introduce themselves. They can just kind of unmute themselves and go around, say hi, and where you work. That would be great.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Nisha Hill. I am the Job Developer and Placement Coordinator at Mount San Jacinto College. I am also a CPA board member, the Vice President of South for the South region. Good morning and welcome. Jackie?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Jackie Kennedy Harris. I'm with JKH Career Coaching. I'm based out of Fresno, and I am the employer rep for the CPA board.
Jackie. I'm Kimberly Carlson. I work for LA County Office of Education. I am a CPA member. I'm president-elect, which is a fancy term, kind of saying vice president, and the conference chair. It's coming up at the end of this month on February 28th, 29th, and March 1st. We hope many of you can make it. We do have registrations are open now. We're going to be staying at the Crown Plaza in Ventura Beach. Some of us went down there last weekend. It's an amazing location. California Placement, we're known for giving excellent conferences and great speakers. So we hope you can join us. Early bird registration does end on February 9th. But we do have Charles Clemens, Cecilia Hastings, Jeremy Sirfling for ChatGPT. Tim Alderger will be there with California, the Workforce Development Foundation, CCC, the colleges. We also have employment engagement through apprenticeship with LinkedIn with Natalie and Sarah. Maxine, she's always energetic and is going to give the talk, Let's Talk About Sex, a customer employee experience. And then we'll have a labor law update. And we have several different quality workshops on Thursday that we hope you will take advantage of while you're there. So I think they're going to throw the link in the chat if you guys want to check us out. We hope to see you there.
Okay. Hi, I'm Lorraine Cepeda, Fresno City College. I'm the Northern Educational Rep, and nice seeing everybody again.
Awesome. Carrie, you want to introduce yourself and then introduce Austin?
Yes, I'm super excited to introduce Austin. So I'm Carrie Ave. I'm the CEO of CareerWise Consulting. I put my information in the chat. I'm also the central or southern employer rep for California Placement Association and a past president a number of years back. So I am super duper duper excited about having Austin here today. I'm always excited about our speakers, but today in particular, if you haven't followed Austin already, you're going to want to follow him on LinkedIn. If you don't know who he is, you're going to be glad today that you get to hear from him. So I want to give you a little bit of details about him. He is the founder of Cultivated Culture, and he started, I believe, back in 2016, which I think most people don't realize that, you seem like an overnight success, Austin, getting, I don't even know what you're at today. I meant to check, but he's got over 1 million followers because his content and his knowledge and his approach and his tools. For those of us that are in the industry, it's like, yeah, this is exactly what people should be doing to get employed. For those of you maybe new to the industry or job seekers, he really has concise, straight to the point information that he shares on how to get you from where you are to where you want to go. So it's great for us as job developers, career service professionals to utilize that in helping also. So he teaches people how to use really unconventional strategies to land the jobs they love, in today's job market, which is a challenging, unusual, job market. And he teaches them how to do it without, even if they don't have traditional experience, and without just relying heavily on applying online, which even as career service professionals, I think that whole application process is not something we love. So his strategies have been featured on Forbes, Business Insider, Fast Company, and many others. And his students have landed interviews and offers at companies like Google, Microsoft, Amazon, Apple, Facebook, Twitter, Uber, Deloitte, Accenture, ESPN, and many more. The really difficult ones to get into. Austin teaches the tips and tricks of how to get into really any company that you want to get into. And he also, I just want to say, he also has a newsletter, cultivatedculture.com/newsletter, which we'll put in the chat for you too, that I really encourage you to follow. So follow him on LinkedIn, sign up for his newsletter. And, but, as we're leading into our topic today, so today Austin's going to be talking about value validation projects. And interestingly enough, and this is why I didn't put a backdrop on, I don't know if you can see it, Austin, this is my first value validation process. When I went through my last career transition, I didn't have a name for it then. It was just a prop, I guess. It was like I need to leave something behind so they don't forget who this woman was that just showed up and networked and tried to talk to you, and then you never saw me. I had to leave something behind, something memorable, and that was in that case was a webinar that I created, a workshop that I created, and I put it on a disc, and I went and I introduced myself. They were too busy to talk to me. The director was too busy to talk to me, but I was able to leave that behind. And when he had time, he has this bright color. It was a bright pink package, with a card and everything and my contact information. And he reached out to me, and the rest is history. I ended up getting my dream job through that. And that was, Anthony Michaelides actually is the director that I left that with. He used to be a member of California Placement Association when he was in career services too. But just a testament to what Austin's going to be teaching you today is that having something like a value validation project is really what's going to help you stand out amongst hundreds of others trying to get a job. So without further ado, Austin, the floor is yours.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the generous introduction, Carrie. I really appreciate it. Also, so cool of you to share your VVP story. I love the disc, and I love that's the outcome that we're looking for when you kind of go above and beyond and do something a little bit differently than everybody else. It does really stand out. So that's my goal today, is to kind of teach everybody our framework for going about that. And I will preface by saying that VVPs tend to be like more of an abstract concept when you first learn them. So, we could talk about this for like an entire day or 2 days or whatever. So I'm going to try to cover as much as I can. And then we'll save some time for questions at the end, just so, if anybody has anything, we can make sure to get those answered. But I also really like to have the chat up whenever I give these presentations. So if people have comments or questions, drop them in the chat. That way I can pick them up kind of live and weave them into what we're talking about, or I can just let you know we'll cover that later, or we'll get it answered later. So with that said, I'll share my screen here, and it should show a slide that says, who is Austin Belcak? Can you all see that? All right, awesome. Cool. So just a brief kind of background. Carrie, you kind of nailed all the salient points. So we don't need to spend too much time there. But I think the most pertinent part of my background and how it relates to today and Cultivated Culture, our company, is essentially my job search journey. So the nutshell version of that is, back when I was in college, I was not so focused on my future. I was not the best studier. I was not the most dedicated to my academic career or my professional career. And that kind of came to bear in my transcript. So I got to college, I wanted to be a doctor. Then I immediately failed chemistry and then failed French my next semester. So, not the best start for future Dr. Austin. And I ended up graduating with a really poor GPA, like 2.57 equivalent of a C something. And so I didn't really know what direction to head in, but I did have the opportunity through actually my roommate's parents, which is it doesn't really get more deep into the nepotism than that, but just he knew somebody who I was able to intern with their company. They offered me a job, and I just accepted it because I didn't want to have to worry about this. And so I actually graduated from college. I didn't apply to a single company. I didn't interview anywhere. I did no job searching. And naturally, that came back to kind of punch me in the face. So I graduate, I start my job, and I am making about $35,000 a year, which don't get me wrong, was a blessing and definitely better than 34 or lower. But at the same time, it wasn't enough with my car payment and my rent and all these other things that I hadn't really thought about or considered. And also that I felt, college didn't really set me up to truly understand as well. So I took this job. I'm traveling all around. I hate it. It's also not enough to make ends meet. So I ended up racking up a pretty big credit card balance just to kind of get by here. And I realized that this wasn't really what I wanted for myself. And when I thought about what I did want, I wanted to get into one of these big companies, which, I think I don't know how often you all hear this, but, I think a lot of job seekers that we work with, these are the names that they're thinking about when they begin a job search. And sometimes they have to then bring their standards down to reality a little bit. But this is what I was looking to do. And I had to figure out how to make this transition from healthcare, from a biology degree, from bad grades, and not much professional experience. So there are a lot of things that went into this. But one of the big strategies that I saw a lot of success with through this process and kind of coming out the other side, basically, I kind of developed a system myself that allowed me to get in the door with Google and Microsoft and Twitter and a couple of other companies. I accepted a role at Microsoft in New York. I worked there for about 5.5 years, going from partner manager up to director of partnerships. And then I left in 2020 to take Cultivated Culture full time. So one of the big strategies that led to this success was our value validation project strategy. So this kind of came about because as I was transitioning industries, going from healthcare into tech, specifically marketing and sales, I didn't have a lot of experience. And so I had to go out and create my own. And one of the ways that I did that was by freelancing. So I would go out and I would try to do basically consulting for small businesses on their marketing side. And I had to figure out a way to stand out from all these other freelancers who had a lot more experience than I did. So one of the things that I started doing was I would just give away a lot more for free. I would do audits of people's businesses. I would share stuff that other people charged for. And I found that got me a lot of traction. And so when I was entering into my job search, one of the most frustrating things that I found was that all of the job search materials that we traditionally use, your resume, your cover letter, your LinkedIn, some answers that you might answer on an application, none of those things allowed us to really sell our future selves, like what we could do at the company. Instead, we were sort of pigeonholed into only talking about what had happened in our past. And that might be fine for traditional applicants, but it can be a lot harder when you're coming from a non-traditional background, or if you were laid off from a company, especially if that layoff came unexpectedly after you'd only been there for a little bit. It's especially hard if you have a career gap, if maybe you took some time off to take care of a family member, or if you took some time off to raise your family or whatever it is. All of a sudden, it becomes really hard to showcase what we could do through a lens that a company is really excited about, especially when there are other candidates who have traditional experience, who don't have gaps, who basically solve for all of the quote red flags that companies may view in our portfolio and our resume. And so I got really frustrated by that because I knew I could do these jobs, but I couldn't get anybody to see that. And so what I decided was I was going to kind of throw out the traditional material, so to speak. Don't get me wrong, I still use them. They're a very important part of the search. But I decided to lean into that same strategy that I had seen work in freelancing. And so my goal was, if I was excited about a company, I would go research them. I would work to understand their goals, their challenges, their initiatives for the next 6 to 12 months, especially as it pertained to whatever type of role or team that I wanted to be a part of. And I would actually build out a mini presentation, like a 5 to 7 slide deck that showed them I understood where they were, I understood where they were going, I knew why they were hiring for this role, and I would share some ideas that, I thought that I could help them deliver on that would, help them overcome challenges or achieve their goals. And so that's really what a value validation project is. And what we found is that it's really effective. It's probably the closest thing to a silver bullet that we found with our clients, because everybody else out there is using the same stuff: resume, LinkedIn, cover letter, interview answers that are kind of aligned with all the templates and guides that you see out there. Nobody's really doing this type of thing. And when we think about the reason why companies hire, the main reason is because they basically just want to bring in the person they trust to drive the most ROI for the role. It doesn't matter what business you're in, what industry, where you're located. At the end of the day, that's kind of a universal principle of hiring. And so if we can position ourselves as that person, we can stand out above other applicants. And the great news for all of us is that, and job seekers everywhere, is that actually, because so many people are invested in resumes, in cover letters, in these traditional materials, which of course are still important, but because so many people are invested in those and not doing anything else, taking a little bit of a step off of that beaten path and creating something slightly different that's also more aligned with what the company actually wants can be a really big difference maker. And so that is essentially what a value validation project is. It's a deliverable that we put together that shows the company we've researched them, we understand where they're looking to go, and we have some ideas and thoughts on how we can help them. And then we use our background kind of as supporting evidence. So that's the premise here. And what I kind of want to do is walk through the process of coming up with a VVP idea, doing some of that research, what that might look like both for private and public companies, and then showing you a couple of examples of value validation projects that we put together that we share with our clients, just so you can see what a finalized version of that might look like. So again, if anybody has any questions as we're going through here, feel free to throw it in the chat. Scott, I saw that some of that resonated with you. I appreciate you chiming in, but totally happy to make this a two-way conversation as well. So in terms of getting started with value validation projects, in my mind, there's really 3 different types of projects that we can put together if we want to simplify things. We can get a lot more detailed and we can get a lot more complex. But if we distill it down to the basics, we can put together a project that highlights a potential opportunity for a company. We can put together a project that highlights a challenge and how we might be able to help that company overcome that challenge. And the third is for the group of folks out there that feel that, how could I ever get this data? Or maybe they're in a role or an industry where it's just harder to do this. For example, like mechanical engineering or cybersecurity, where data about a target company may be, kind of kept close to the chest and harder to get. We can create a value validation project that essentially acts as a resume where we control the language, where we control the stories, and we essentially create case studies of our experience and share them through a value validation project. So those are kind of the 3 major buckets here. And when it comes to creating these, there's specific times when we encourage our clients to put in the work, because these are not something that you do in half an hour. These are something that take several hours to put together, especially at the beginning. It's going to take a lot longer. And then as you get better at them, you can optimize things. But by and large, this is an investment. And so we never recommend that people just put these together with every application they submit or kind of willy-nilly. Instead, we sort of have 3 specific criteria. The first criteria is that you already have a formal interview at this company. If you already have a phone screen or you're in the interview process, you should be putting one of these together. The second is that this is just a dream company and you will do anything. It does not matter how much work, it does not matter what it is. You so badly want to work at this company that you will do whatever it takes to get in the door. Those are the first 2 examples. The third is the most common, and that is when you have had the opportunity to connect with somebody at the company who you feel will be an advocate for you. So for us at Cultivated Culture, our entire ethos is based around getting jobs without applying online, and that essentially means we spend 90% of our search focus on networking and building relationships and turning them into referrals. And the reason that we encourage people to do that before creating one of these projects is because, one, we want to ensure that you're protecting your time and not burning out. But two, when you have that connection with somebody, one, you have a direct source that you can send this project to, but two, you can use that person to get more information and validate your ideas and get feedback and really refine this project as well. And so Chris asked if there's supposed to be a slide change. No, we're still sitting on this article for now. We're going to start walking through some research steps in a second. But we are doing a little bit fast and loose today. So I appreciate you all bearing with me there. And Chris, that's a totally fair question. I appreciate you asking. But yeah, so that's when we want to put these together is essentially we have an interview. This is a dream company, or we've already connected with somebody who we feel like will advocate for us, and we really want to seal the deal. We want to get this in the door, and we really want to turn this person into an advocate who also can use this to sell us through the interview process. Then we need to come up with our ideas. So every company is going to be different. There are going to be private companies, public companies. There's going to be different, information available for each. So I'm going to give you all a whole bunch of different strategies that we can use to research companies and come up with some of these ideas and kind of walk you through my thought process as we do this. And we'll try to hit as many different angles as we can. But for me, what I like to look at when it comes to generating ideas and researching companies is I want a broad understanding of where the company is at and where they're looking to go. I want a slightly deeper understanding of all of that from the people who are at the helm of the company, if I possibly can. Then I also want to understand what users and customers and clients and partners are saying about this company and about this product. And then I just generally want to get my hands on the product myself, if possible, or get as close to that as I possibly can to really understand, what's going on here. So the first place that I like to start, this is strictly for publicly traded companies, but I always like to start with earnings calls. So some people may be familiar with those, but earnings calls are essentially, on a quarterly basis, public companies have to report out on their earnings and talk about, what happened over the last quarter, what went well, what didn't, where they're looking to go next. You can very easily find these, and we're going to use Spotify for this entire example because they have a lot of good content on this. But you just type in the company name and investor relations, and then you're looking for this link. And when you click through it, you can see their earnings webcasts. And oftentimes these will come with a deck, they'll come with a transcript. But if we view these, you can essentially see, and these registration forms are required by the SEC. So they're not lead capture forms. They're a government requirement. So you can pop your stuff in here. And this is basically going to give you a 60-minute conversation about what's happening at Spotify, over the last quarter in Q4 of 2023. And they talk about everything that we care about, what went well, what didn't, where they're looking to go next, what challenges they're facing. This gives us a really broad sweep of the general, place that the company is in right now and what's important to them. So I always like to start here. The next place I'd like to go is the site called Seeking Alpha, again, for publicly traded companies only. But I'll put in their ticker. And what I like about Seeking Alpha is that they have a news section, but they also have an analysis section. So the news is what you would expect. It's just kind of objective, or at least more objective, current events and things that are happening at the company. But the analysis section are a bunch of, and I can definitely put some of these links in the chat for sure. The analysis section is where a bunch of financial analysts whose job it is to follow these companies, they're sharing their opinion here. And I think this is really nice because you'll find that some people will say, hey, based on Spotify's earnings, I think they're going to explode over the next year. And somebody else is going to tell you, I think Spotify is a disaster. I think it's going to tank over the next year. So you can get all of these different perspectives, and then you can use that to understand what both sides of the coin look like, as well as helping form your own opinion. So these are going to be a little bit different than what you might see in just the straight up news. And I love Seeking Alpha because it provides both. Now, something that you can do for both publicly traded and private companies is just run a Google News search. I like to look for as recent as I can get. So I might filter by the past month or the past quarter or the past 6 months. And I'm just going to go through here and try to understand what's happening. So something that seems to be really interesting is, a focus on Spotify's podcasting. Actually, when I pulled up these articles, I was planning to talk about the music side, but we see a bunch of interesting headlines here around things, and this will continue as we go into more of the research, but specifically around their podcast business. And so it seems like, people are saying that, Spotify is, changing their deal with Joe Rogan. people thought their podcast business wasn't going to be profitable, but it turns out it may actually be profitable. So we're getting some really interesting information on what's going on at Spotify here. And that can provide us with some rabbit holes to go down. So for example, I don't know much about Spotify's podcast business. So what I might do is Google Spotify podcast business, and I can read a bunch of articles about what changes they're making, what they've done over the past year, the evolution of this business to where it was, where they started, and to where it is now. And based off these headlines, I think there would probably be a really interesting value validation project idea in there. So that's something that we can pay attention to. The next thing that I like to do once we sort of have that top line overview is try to understand some more context around that from the people who run the company. So I'm going to go ahead and Google the company's name and then leadership team. And usually the company itself will have a page on this. If not, there are all these other third-party sites that will have it. But you can click into whatever page works for you, and you can get a list of people who are effectively running the company. So I'm going to take each of these people. I'm not just going to do one person. I'm going to take each of these people, and I am going to basically try to look up interviews, podcasts, whatever I can find where they are sharing their vision or sharing more information about what's happening at the company. And I'm going to try to get as recent as I can. So Scott mentioned, can we also go directly to the company website? Absolutely. Checking out the company's blogs, checking out, their about page, checking out everything on the company's website is usually what most people do anyways, which is one of the reasons I skipped over it. But absolutely one of the things that we should start with before jumping into all this stuff. So Scott, appreciate you calling that out. That's absolutely a great piece of advice. With these, the leadership team at the company, I'm going to start with the first person on the list. I'm going to grab their name and I'm going to run some searches. So something like Daniel Ek podcast. And I may even use the filtration here to filter by, let's say, past month, past year, and see if anything comes up. And what this is going to allow me to do is understand what's happening right now at the company from the person who runs the company. And I'm going to do the same thing on YouTube as well. Maybe I switch up the language to interview or keynote or talk, and I can use that same filtration around timing. And here we have, an hour and a half interview from 4 months ago. Here we have a 43-minute talk 10 months ago. Here's something from 4 weeks ago. So we have a lot of content here that we can use to understand more about what's going on at the company from the guy who's making the decisions here. So this is a great place to take that high level information that we got initially and to kind of go a level deeper with it and really expand on the different opportunities, challenges, etc. Now, I'm not just going to stop with one person. I mean, if you feel like you have a good idea at this point, that's great, but I would probably go back and do it for the rest of these people as well. I think what you'll find is only 1 or 2 of these people is actually going to be out there and have content. Most of the time, a lot of these folks are more behind the scenes, and there's usually only 1 or 2 people who are getting out there and evangelizing the company and really marketing it. So I don't think it hurts, though, to check all the names just so you can get a whole variety of perspectives here. So this is the first place that I'm going to start. And all of this is going to give me a broad overview of how the company views themselves and how the company is thinking about where they're going to go next. And that's what's most important, because companies, they believe that they are right more so than, listening to customers potentially or third-party reviewers or anything like that. Companies really believe that they know what's best for them. So this is always my starting point. But then I want to get some additional perspectives. So I'm going to close out of these windows just to open up some bandwidth. And then we can pull up the screen here. So can you all see? Oh, no, you can't. Okay. Let me just share this. Okay, cool. Great. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look up reviews. And I'm not just going to look them up for Spotify. I'm going to look them up for competitors as well. So whenever we can get information about competitors' products, that's always really helpful, because sometimes the competition is doing things a different way. Sometimes they're doing things that our target company isn't doing. Sometimes they are just, they have a totally different perspective that this company isn't considering. And so it's really interesting to see what the whole landscape looks like, because that can really spark some additional ideas as well. So in this case, I'll search for Spotify reviews and I'll pull up a bunch of these. And I will do the same for Apple Music, for Tidal, for other streaming services as well. And I'm going to read through the entire article and really try to understand what the pros are and what the cons are. Now, the music streaming industry has come a long way since I did my VVP example that I'm going to share in a moment. So some of the cons have been resolved, which is great to see for those companies. But there's not a whole lot to work with here in terms of cons sides, free versions and lossless audio. So that can be the case, and that's why we do a bunch of research. But sometimes you can find some real gems in here. Sometimes there's a glaring con that is mentioned that is maybe unique to this business, or maybe is pervasive across the industry. Either way, that's a really, really interesting thing for us to consider as we potentially build something out here. After I look at more of those like formal reviews, I'm going to go try to find reviews in other places. So I know Spotify has an app, so I may open up the App Store and I may scroll down to the reviews and ratings here and just kind of check out. There's a bunch of 5 stars here, but there's a 3-star, and this person looks like they have a bunch of thoughts on how this app could be improved. That same thing is going to hold true for some of these other sites, right? So here's a 2-star review, here's a 3-star review, here's a 3-star review. So I tend to ignore 5-star reviews and 1-star reviews, and I tend to really focus on the 2 to 3-star reviews because that's where most of the best content is going to be. That's not carrying a lot of baggage or emotion with it. And this is another great place to understand, where this company could be doing better, especially if we take that in the context of doing the same thing for the competition, going and looking at the reviews for Apple Music or Tidal or any of these other companies. And so for sure, not every company is going to have App Store reviews, but there are other places to find these reviews. There are sites, G2 is a site that reviews different pieces of technology. There's a bunch of different places. If you just run a Google search for the product and then reviews, you should be able to find a bunch of different websites where people are offering up reviews about the business and the product. So that's another place that I like to look, and it's really interesting to see where those threads take us. If people mention specific features that we're interested in, we can go look them up in other places. We could go, for example, if people were really grumpy about a specific feature around searching for songs by lyrics, we could then go plug that into X and see what people are saying about that. And now we're starting to get a really clear picture of what users and customers are actually saying about this company. So I also like to take it one step further with the reviews and try to get them from sources that also allow me to go a bit deeper with the product. So I may go back to YouTube and look up something like Spotify versus Apple Music or Spotify versus Apple Podcasts. And you can see we got a bunch of options here. We've got 17-minute video from a month ago, 11-minute video, 12-minute video from 4 months ago. All these are relatively new. And all these people are going to be talking about pros and cons and have different perspectives. So this is another great opportunity for us to get an understanding of what the product is all about. We can also just look up tutorials. Spotify. I don't know how many there are tutorials. I think most people know how to use some of these apps. But for example, if we were looking for a job at a place that has a much more sophisticated piece of technology, like Salesforce, we could look up something similar, and now we get these tutorials that walk us through the product so that we can actually see what it looks like. And this is especially helpful if we can't get hands-on. The last thing that I like to do here is I like to look for information in communities. So Reddit is a really great place for this. If you go to Google and you use this site operator, this basically means that whatever you search for here is only going to search on this site. So in this instance, I'm searching for Spotify review and I'm only searching Reddit, which is why the results are all about Reddit. But you can see this person's sharing a review after 6 months of switching from Spotify. Here's another person, 6-month review of Apple Music, but former Spotify user. Is Spotify Premium worth it? We're going to get a lot of interesting information from these conversations. And we can see, these different feature requests and these different complaints, within these threads. So this is just another really interesting place for us to get, some information from the customer side, from the user side for all of these companies. So once we've done all this, we should have a decent idea of the different places that we or the different opportunities that these companies have to capitalize on, the different challenges that they might be facing. And so now what we can do is we can take that and we can work that into an actual value validation project. So what I'll do here is share one of our templates, and this is from one of our paid products. So we typically don't share it publicly, but I figured it would be a good opportunity to kind of showcase some of the stuff we're talking about here. But essentially on our side of things, the way that we like to set things up is first, I want to make the deck or the presentation or the deliverable on brand. I wanted to use the same colors as the companies. I wanted to use the logos. I wanted to use the fonts. There are a bunch of different ways to find that stuff. You can look up brand guides. There are pieces of technology and tools that will show you kind of this information when you look up different companies. But I like to match it as best I can, and I'll give you examples of that in a second. For the first slide, I like to have the company logo, and I like to have an attention-grabbing headline. So, maybe 3 ways that Spotify can, increase their market share by 5% in 2024. Now, maybe that's a bit of an ambitious goal. But what I like to do is try to tell people, hey, what are you going to get out of reading this? And if I can make that specific, 3 things, 3 tips, 3 ways to overcome this challenge or whatever it is, that can be really, really helpful. And the reason we have it set up this way is because when you email somebody, I don't know if you remember the last time you got like a PDF attachment, but the first thing that people see in the email is a mini screenshot of this slide. So if we make this title really large, that's what people are going to see, makes them more likely to click on it, and then it makes them more likely to go through your presentation as well. I also like to have art details here so it doesn't get lost on who put the time and effort into creating this presentation. And I like to have those on every slide as well. But then the next slide is basically aligning ourselves with the company. So we want the company to believe that these ideas are real and aligned with where they're going, and not just something that we kind of came up with in the shower and, sounded good to us. So I always like to look for maybe a quote from one of the podcasts with the CEO that you found. Maybe there's data from a publication that is pertinent to this. Maybe there's some customer information that you want to share. We just want to try to use real data or real information from people at the company to say, hey, this is what your company cares about. And I know that because somebody at your company said it, or the industry is moving in this direction because this reputable source has data that proves it. That's really what we're looking to do here. Next, we want to insert problem or our opportunity statement, essentially saying in the last slide, hey, this is where you're going, and here's the problem that you're facing, or here's the opportunity that you need to tap into in order to help you get there. And we want to make this as tangible as possible as well. We really want to clearly define, the direction that we're headed in. Next, I like to have what we call a table of content slide. So this is basically the ideas that you're going to be sharing. I typically max it out at 3, and I usually look for a minimum of about 2. I find that provides enough value, but not so much that people kind of glaze over and stop reading. And the idea here is to give people a little teaser of what to expect if they continue going down the deck, because we, at every step, every slide, we risk losing this person's attention. So anytime we can get them back in, anytime we can get them resold on what we're talking about here, we want to do that. And then we kind of go through this call and response setup of highlighting our first problem or opportunity, presenting that, and then presenting our solution. And then we just kind of do the same thing with a second opportunity, the second solution, and then the third opportunity, and the third solution. And then last but not least, we have sort of a biographical slide that talks about why you are a good fit for this company and why your background qualifies you to be somebody who can actually, is qualified to share these ideas, is qualified to act on these ideas. And the nice part about this is that you get to showcase the bullets that you want. It's not chronological. It's not in a resume format. This is you getting to talk about the work that you want to share. And then, of course, you can link to your resume and your LinkedIn here. So this is basically the outline in the template. But to show an example of what this might look like for Spotify, we kind of put together this example. So to start here, what we noticed was back when I created this example was that Spotify had some issues with their listening experience among their users. So we started with that. The whole thing is branded. You can see we have Spotify's logo. One of their colors is black. We got that going. We use the same font that Spotify uses. And we have this big, 3 ways to improve Spotify's listening experience. So to align ourselves with the brand, I grabbed a picture of the CEO and I grabbed this quote from him where he basically said, putting your customers in focus and listening to what they're actually saying instead of what they tell you, like that's what we want to do. That's what's important to us. So here we have the CEO basically saying there's an emphasis on listening to customers to improve their product. But when we go look at some of the reviews that are out there, we see that that's not really, manifesting in the actual product itself. TechCrunch is saying they're falling behind in these areas, specifically lyrics and video. PC Mag is saying they don't have as many videos. Digital Trends is saying, that they have this issue here. And so these are all reputable sites, reputable review sites. By putting them in here, we're kind of saying, hey, look, there's a disconnect here. You're telling us this, you're saying this in your interviews, in your keynotes, but in reality, here's what's actually happening. Here's what happens when the rubber meets the road. And so then we back that up by saying, your listeners actually agree with these issues. Here are these screenshots from tweets where people are talking about the things that they don't like that specifically relate to what's going on up here. So again, we're saying, look, it's not just these reviewers that are saying this. It's also your actual users. They're out there on X or, Twitter back when I took these screenshots, and they're having these issues. These are real issues. And so if you want to improve, we need to solve these. So then we come to our table of contents slide and we kind of outline our 3 ideas, introducing search by lyrics, improving your search functionality, and introducing music videos and live concerts. All of those directly tie back to the negative reviews and the negative sentiments that people were sharing on social media. So then we go through each of these and we kind of talk about how the competition is already doing this. We share some reputable data. And so in this case, we're saying, we surveyed Spotify users and we looked through a bunch of app reviews and 89% of them mentioned lyrics as their #1 priority. And there was also, the review also showed that 90% of people mentioned lyrics in a negative fashion. And we would want to link to, whatever this data source is. In addition to that, we're adding more data from a third-party survey, and we're linking to those to, again, show like, hey, this isn't just random information that I came across. This is real data from reputable folks in the industry. And so how do we fix this? Well, we improve our search by allowing people to search by using lyrics. And I'm actually showing how the competition is doing this and explaining how they can do that. And so we sort of rinse and repeat here, adding music videos. We talk about why this is important. We have a bunch of reports and a bunch of data here. And then we talk about how Spotify can add that in as well. And then last but not least, we talk about why this person is, in this case, music to Spotify's ears, but basically saying why I'm a good fit at the company. And we make it personal. We talk about the music that they like to listen to. We have specific bullets from their resume. And then we have links to their LinkedIn profile, their portfolio, and their Spotify. So hopefully this kind of illustrates, what a good VVP looks like. Now, this is sort of like, I built this to spec using fictional people and sometimes fictional sources. And so this is sort of like the Rolls Royce, wave a magic wand and have the best VVP anybody could create. So it certainly doesn't have to be this level, but I think it's helpful to kind of see a vision of this, if you could build it out from scratch. But people have, had far worse designs and far less information and still turn that into job offers because nobody else is doing this. And so the last thing that I'll say just quickly is that we can, I guess, 2 more things. The second to last thing I'll say is that it doesn't have to always be focused on, an opportunity or a challenge. In some cases, we may want to create a portfolio. Again, if we can't find an opportunity or we can't find a challenge or the data isn't there, we can always take bullets from our resume and turn them into a portfolio where we control the language, where we control the value, where we control the presentation. And so in this case, this person is a data scientist who's looking for a data engineer at this company, Away Luggage. And they're obviously a luggage company, and this person is tying his portfolio to what they care about. So he talks about a brand sentiment analysis he did by scraping tweets here, and he uses travel focused brands. They talk about a Toomey luggage tracking project that they worked on here, which again, very relevant in terms of the type of company he's targeting. And he talks about an application that will allow for people to see, a piece of luggage in maybe an Instagram post and be able to understand what that is and be able to go buy it on, let's say, Toomey's site or a Waze site. And so all these things in the context of this example were projects that he'd previously worked on. He's not coming up with brand new ideas. He's not researching the company 6 ways from Sunday. Instead, he has a basic idea of what the company is looking for. And he's saying, hey, I've done these things in the past, but all of this in a single resume bullet, it doesn't really describe the full scope of what this project is. I can't include visuals. I can't give you context. I can't share more info and use my own words. So we can use VVPs as, almost like a visual and personalized version of our resume. So we don't have to use that weird resume language that we never use anywhere else. And that, job seekers don't really understand how to write in, and hiring managers don't really understand how to read in, and all of that craziness that we have to deal with. And look, you have a need for a data scientist, you're a luggage company. I've done data focused stuff for luggage, entities in the past. This seems like a good fit. So we're just really simplifying it down to what the company cares about and what we can offer here. The last thing I'll say before we jump into questions is one of the most common things that we hear when we give these presentations or talk about these is, what happens if somebody steals my ideas? And the font is really small here. I don't expect you to read it. I'm happy to kind of walk through it. But that's a valid concern, right? What if we put in all this work and a company steals our ideas and they run away with it and we don't get hired? Why would I even do this? So in my mind, there's a very tangible reason to still do this. And then there is a less tangible reason, but both of them offer a lot of upside. So if we look at the math, when you get a new job, the data tells us that, the average person who gets a new job is looking at roughly a 10 to 20% raise. So anybody who's changing jobs out there in aggregate, that average is going to be 10 to 20% of what they were making before. So if we take a job seeker who is making, was making $60,000 at their last job or $60K in their current job, if we look at the 10 to 20% raise, that's basically a $6,000 to $12,000 raise for that person if they get a new job. So then if we assume that a value validation project takes 8 hours to create, which is probably more what it would look like at the beginning, you can get a little bit faster at them, but I think it's better to use a higher number here just to really emphasize the math. Let's say that it takes 8 hours to create and we make 4 of them. We're interviewing with 4 companies. We want to make 4 value validation projects. That takes us 32 hours to create. 32 hours is a lot of time, right? Let's say that 3 of those companies steal our ideas and they completely ghost us. We never hear from them again. Maybe we even see some of our ideas on their website later, like the most frustrating thing that we could possibly imagine. But let's say that the 4th company, they really love what they see in your project and they end up hiring you. And it's somewhere in the middle. It's an $8,000 raise. So $8,000 divided by the 32 extra hours that you spent building the VVPs is a $250 an hour rate. Whereas the new $68,000 salary gives you an hourly rate of about $32. So big discrepancy there in terms of the rates that we're looking at. So by doing that 32 hours of additional work, you netted yourself an $8,000 raise. You also netted yourself a new job. And there's so many intangibles that come with a new job, right? It's not just the money. It's maybe a better manager. It's a better culture. It's better flexibility. It's, if you're unemployed, it's going from 0 to, a full salary. It may be better benefits. There are all these things that come with getting a new job. And so the extra time, is it hard when we're already job searching and busting our butt? Absolutely. But the increased chance that we have of standing out and landing a role when we do these is so much, that reward is so much larger than the potential risk of some of these companies taking our ideas and running with them. And I think the other thing that we need to consider here is the type of company that you want to work for. So for me, I personally am not in love with the idea of working for a company that steals candidates' ideas as a means to grow and develop their business. What's going to happen? I'm not even on the payroll yet. What happens when I'm on the payroll and all of a sudden my manager is taking all of my ideas and stealing the credit for them and I never get promoted, right? These are the types of things that I think most job seekers don't think about when investing this extra work. And what this allows you to do is truly know that a company values the enthusiasm you have, the extra hours that you're willing to put in, your work ethic, all these intangible things that if you continue to do them because you're excited about this company, you're going to see, more of what you saw when they gave you the offer. You're going to be able to negotiate a higher salary. You're going to be promoted. You're going to get all these positive things. Whereas the companies that stole your ideas, you probably dodged a pretty big bullet by, having that happen. And so I actually see a lot of upside even in companies taking these things and running with them and ghosting us, even if it feels really hard in the moment. So that was a lot of information. I also want to make sure that we have some time for questions here as well. I see a couple in the chat potentially. Carrie, you mentioned how we might be able to use AI. Kelty, I saw you have a question as well, so we can go through each of those. And then if anybody else has any questions, totally feel free to put them in the chat, and we'll answer as many as we can here before the top of the hour. So, Carrie, you mentioned AI. AI can definitely be used here in a bunch of different capacities. On the research side, I think you just have to be careful about the data set. For example, ChatGPT's data is, I believe, trained up to 2021. It may have gone further since I last looked at the data, but it's important that we use an entity that's being trained on data that's real time, because that's what companies care most about. And you don't want to be in a situation where you're like, hey, this is a challenge, and they were like, well, it was 3 years ago, but not so much anymore. So that's one thing. It can help with the research, but at the same time, we want to make sure that the data is accurate. There are tools out there that will help you create an awesome presentation if design isn't your thing, if that's like a terrifying thing for you. There are AIs that will create a beautiful presentation. You just feed it the information and it will build the presentation for you and let you edit it. So that can be a really big time saver as well. And you can also take a bunch of the information, like you can just brainstorm onto a document, and then you can feed that into an AI and you can say, hey, can you break this down into a specific format? Like, can we break all this information down into a couple of ideas? Or you could feed it, a bunch of the articles that you found, and you could say, based off of this, what are a couple of ideas that I could put together to potentially pitch to this company? And you could see what AI comes up with. So 3 random examples off the top of my head. I think the use cases for AI are pretty limitless. There's a ton of tools out there that I'm not aware of, and it's just about understanding what is available to us and getting creative. But for sure, anytime that we can reduce the amount of mental energy and inputs on our side and leverage AI to offload some of that so we can bring our magic touch to like the final product, I'm always in favor of that. So I think that's a great question. Kelty, you mentioned, do you have recommendations for when in the interview process to send this and the best method for doing so? Absolutely. So just recapping earlier, the 3 kind of criteria to meet in order to send one of these: you already have a formal interview. This is a dream company that you would do anything to work for, or you have a connection with somebody who you feel like would be a strong advocate for you. So if you're meeting that advocate piece, I'm sending it to them at the very beginning, and I'm hoping that they include it when they reach out to the hiring manager and they say, hey, so-and-so, I know you have this opening on your team, and I've been chatting with Carrie, who's amazing, and she put together this presentation that I think, it explains everything that you need to know about why you should bring her in for an interview, and you'd be silly not to. So it really helps that person kind of advocate for you and sell for you. But if you haven't built one out, or even if that's the case, we don't want to assume that any of our interviewers are going to get that project. So my rule of thumb is, if we're earlier on in the interview process, my rule of thumb is I'm going to send the value validation project usually via email to the people I'm interviewing with. You can always ask a recruiter, hey, who am I going to be meeting with? Do you mind sharing their details? You can send it to them, and I like to send it with enough time for them to see it, but maybe not enough time for them to go through it with a fine-tooth comb before I have the opportunity to sit down and chat with them. So for me, that kind of looks like if my interview's in the morning, I'll send it the evening before. And if my interview's in the afternoon, I'll send it the morning of the interview. And that way they can kind of see it, but I can jump in and, I can share more about it when we get on our call. If you're later in the process and we're just hearing about this or thinking about this, it never hurts to follow up on, the previous conversations you've had. So you could put something like this together and email the people that you just interviewed with, a couple of days ago and say, hey, I was thinking a little bit more about our conversation, and, I'm also like, I'm incredibly excited about this role and the opportunity for joining the team. And, I'd be remiss if I didn't do everything I possibly could to show you why I think I will be able to help you achieve these goals or overcome these challenges. So what I did was put together this, 7-slide deck that has 3 ideas for overcoming this challenge that we spoke about in our conversation. It's attached here, and, thanks for considering me, or whatever it is. So we can always send it after the fact. And we've had a lot of candidates who are in later rounds who do this, and that gives them the bump and ends up getting them the offer over other folks. Because typically when you get to the end of the process, you have a lot of really qualified candidates who are all kind of neck and neck, and it's sometimes splitting hairs between making that final hiring decision. And so anything that you can do to kind of nudge the scales in your direction, or tip the scales in your direction, is absolutely worth it. So it's never too late to put one of these together as well. And it's always a great idea to showcase, the value that you bring to the table. Of course, if you think it's worth it. If you go through this process and you realize, this company wasn't really what I thought it was, if they give me an offer and it's worth it, maybe I'll consider things. But if not, no love lost, then for sure, you don't need to spend 8 hours or whatever it is creating a project for that company. So, definitely we can all trust our intuition on that one. But that was a great question. Thank you. That is all that I see in the chat. So does anybody else have any questions on any of this? Anything else I can answer? No worries if not.
Not a softball question. Where do I learn more about this? I mean, do you have all of this? And I'm guessing that there's pricing or whatever. Like, is it your website? I mean, where? Or can I do a Google search? Yeah. I mean, how am I? I love this idea. I know I tell my clients and students all the time, like, do your company research before the interview process. And this is just it on steroids. So I love the idea.
For sure. It's a great question, Greg. So we have an article, I linked it up in the chat, that kind of shares things at a high level. We also do have like all the examples that I shared. We do have a starter kit that kind of includes 4 different examples for like the 4 areas that we like to leverage. I mentioned the 3 of them. So opportunity, challenge, basically turning your resume into a presentation. The 4th one is creating a value validation project for a promotion. That's something that I did for basically all the times that I got promoted at Microsoft. So just sharing that as an option for people as well. But that's all on the website. So you can find it through this article. You can find it through the courses tab as well. But yeah, all this is here. And we're talking about this stuff a lot in my LinkedIn content and in our podcast as well. So yeah, this is one of our core strategies. So you hear a lot about it from us, kind of no matter where you're tuning in.
Someone just asked me, you do coaching as well?
Yeah, we do coaching on our side. Yeah, we coach people through our job search system and help them get hired at companies that they're excited about.
Can I ask pricing on that? No.
I mean, you can for sure. It's on our website and everything. Okay, but that's yeah, that's why we're lucky to have Adriana who's on with us today, and Forrest is our other coach. They handle all of that for us, and they do an awesome job of teaching people our system and helping them kind of learn a better process to go about this.
Perfect.
I also want to mention, check out his site. I put the link in there for Cultivated Culture. He has a lot of free tools like you see up at the top there on helping with your resume, your LinkedIn, having an effective headline on LinkedIn, the bullet points of your resume, how to find emails of people, which in the networking piece when you're trying to land that job is so helpful. So I want to recommend you really kind of explore his entire site there and everything that Austin and his team have to offer.
Appreciate
Austin,
you. Thank you so much. Sorry, go ahead,
Austin.
Greg.
Oh no, I just want to thank you for taking time to present for us today. I want to thank all of you for coming. If you liked Austin, check out his website. If you love this kind of content, come to our state conference. I've been to a lot of conferences. This is for boots on the ground people just like you and myself, learning things that are going to help us every day. This is not for admin. That's the great thing about California Placement Association. It's really for those job developers. It's not too late to register. It's not $1,000 or even close to it like some of those other conferences out there. It's a beautiful hotel right on the beach. So yeah, I invite you to go to calplacement.org. I think it's /Ventura. I'm sure we'll put the link in the chat again. But yeah, I want to thank you all for coming. And Austin, it's noon. I know it's lunchtime for some of you. If Austin has a few moments, if you can stay, if you have questions or want to talk one-on-one, I'll keep the chat open. But yeah, thank you all. I look forward to seeing you again.
Awesome. Thank you, Greg. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah.